The fire's going again, same as it always does when I sit out here. Wood catches, burns down. You add more if you want it to keep going. Simple as that. Nights come in around us, cold, waiting just beyond where the light reaches. You're here again, or someone is. Doesn't matter much who. We're here. That's what matters. Sitting in this warmth while the dark presses in from all sides. I knew someone once who I thought might become a friend, maybe more than a friend. Hard to say, because it never got far enough to know what it might have been. This was years ago, when I was living in a city, working at a shop that sold books, old books, mostly the kind people came looking for when they wanted something specific they couldn't find anywhere else, or when they just wanted to be around books, to touch them and smell them and feel like they were part of something that mattered. The person worked at a coffee shop down the street from the bookshop, a small place that made good coffee and had a few tables where people could sit and read or work or just watch the street through the window. I'd go there most mornings before my shift started, get coffee, sometimes sit for a few minutes if I had time, sometimes just take it to go and walk the rest of the way to work, drinking it. They worked behind the counter, made the coffee, took orders, cleaned tables when customers left. All the usual things people do in coffee shops. I noticed them after a few visits. Noticed them in that way you notice someone when you see them regularly and they start to become familiar, start to be part of the pattern of your day. They had dark hair, I remember that, kept it short, and they wore glasses that were always a little dirty, always had smudges on them, like they'd been touched or adjusted to many times. We didn't talk at first, except for the necessary exchange of ordering coffee, me saying what I wanted them, making it, me paying them, giving. Change the whole thing, taking maybe 30 seconds and not requiring anything beyond basic politeness. But after a few weeks of this, after enough mornings of seeing each other, we started adding small things to the exchange. Small comments about the weather, or how busy it was, or whether I was working that day. And those small comments grew into slightly longer conversations, still brief, still contained by the fact that they were working and I was just passing through, but longer than they needed to be, long enough that I started to feel like maybe we were becoming something more than customer and person who makes coffee. Not friends exactly. Not yet, but moving in that direction, heading toward something that might become friendship if we kept going. I learned their name eventually, asked them one morning when the shop was quiet and they had time to talk. Their name was James, or maybe it was John, something simple and common. A name you hear all the time and don't think much about. And they asked mine, and I told them, and that felt significant somehow. That exchange of names, like weed, crossed some line, moved from being strangers to being people who knew each other's names, who had that small piece of information about each other. After that, we talked more when I came in, talked about whatever was happening, about the books I was selling at work, about the customers they dealt with at the coffee shop, about the city and the neighborhood and the small things that made up our days. And I started looking forward to those mornings, started getting up a little earlier so I'd have more time to sit and talk, started thinking about things I might mention or ask about, planning conversations in my head before they happened. And I think they were doing the same thing, or at least it seemed like they were. Seemed like they were glad to see me. Seemed like they saved time for me even when the shop was busy. Seemed like they were interested in the things I said and remembered them from one day to the next. And there was something building between us, something neither of us named or acknowledged, but that was there, present in the way we talked and looked at each other and found reasons to keep the conversation going, even when there was no reason, even when I should have left to get to work on time. I thought about asking them to do something outside of the coffee shop, to get a meal or see a movie or just walk around the city together, but I never did, kept putting it off, kept telling myself I'd do it next time, kept waiting for the right moment that never quite seemed to arrive. And I think maybe they were waiting for the same thing, waiting for me to ask, or maybe waiting to ask themselves, but neither of us did. Both of us just stayed in that space of talking at the coffee shop, of having these morning conversations that felt important but didn't lead anywhere. This went on for months, maybe half a year. The same routine every morning, me coming in, them making my coffee, us talking for whatever time we had before I needed to leave for work. And it felt good, felt like something real was developing, felt like we were moving towards something even if we weren't moving very fast, even if we weren't being clear about what that something was. But then things changed, the way things always change, the way nothing stays the same, no matter how much you want it to. The bookshop where I worked closed down. The owner retired, and nobody wanted to take it over. And suddenly, I didn't have work anymore. Didn't have a reason to be in that neighborhood every day. Didn't have a reason to stop at the coffee shop every morning. I kept going for a while after the bookshop closed. Kept making the trip even though I didn't have anywhere to go after. Just went to get coffee and talked to James or John or whatever their name was, to maintain that connection, to keep that part of my routine alive, even though the rest of it was gone. But it felt different, felt forced somehow, felt like I was going there for them, rather than because it was on my way. And I think they noticed the difference, noticed that something had changed in why I was there. And after a few weeks of this, after a few awkward conversations, where we both felt the shift but didn't talk about it, I stopped going. Didn't make a decision to stop, didn't plan it, just woke up one morning and didn't go. Stayed home instead, made coffee at home. And then the next morning I did the same thing. And then the next, and after a few days of not going, it became easier to not go than to go. Became normal to not be there. Became part of my new routine that didn't include that coffee shop or that person. I thought about them sometimes after I stopped going, wondered if they noticed I wasn't coming anymore, if they wondered what happened to me, if they missed the conversations we'd had. I thought about going back, about showing up one morning and explaining that I'd been busy or dealing with things, or just needed a break, making up some excuse that would explain the absence without having to admit that I deliberately stopped coming. But I never did go back, never made the effort to reconnect, just let it fade. Let whatever we'd been building fall apart from not being maintained, from not being important enough to fight for or hold on to. And I don't know if that was the right choice or the wrong choice. Don't know if we would have become friends if I'd kept going. If we would have become more than friends. If we would have found out what that thing was that was building between us. But I think about it sometimes, about those morning conversations, about the way they smiled when I came in, about the way we talked about nothing important but made it feel important just by the attention we gave it. And I wonder what might have happened if I'd asked them to do something outside the coffee shop, if I'd taken that step, if I'd been willing to risk changing what we had into something else that might have been better or might have been worse. And I wonder what they thought when I stopped coming. If they assumed something had happened to me, or if they understood that I'd just moved on. If they were hurt by it or relieved. If they thought about me the way I thought about them, or if I was just another regular customer who stopped being regular. Nothing special, nothing worth remembering. I'll never know, and that's probably fine. That's probably how it should be. Some things stay unfinished, stay in that space of possibility where they could have been something but never were. And maybe that's better than finding out they would have been nothing, that the potential was more interesting than the reality would have been. There was someone else I knew, different time, different place. Someone I had a connection with that never quite became what it might have become, that stayed stuck in some middle place between acquaintance and something more. This was when I was living in a small town, working at a place that made furniture, tables and chairs and cabinets, simple, solid things built to last. The person worked there too, worked at a different station on the line, but close enough that we'd see each other during the day. Close enough that we'd take breaks at the same time, sometimes end up in the break room together, sit at the same table, and eat our lunches and talk about whatever people talk about at work. Nothing deep. Nothing personal, just surface things that fill time and make the day pass easier. Their name was Sarah. I'm pretty sure it was Sarah. Or maybe it was Emily, one of those names that sounds soft and familiar. They were quiet mostly, didn't talk a lot in groups, didn't draw attention to themselves, just did their work and kept to themselves. And maybe that's why I noticed them, because I was the same way, because we had that in common, that preference for quiet, that comfort with not being the center of things. We started talking more after a few weeks of working there together, started seeking each other out during breaks, started sitting together even when other people were around. And I could feel something developing, some kind of connection that was more than just work friendship, something that felt different, felt like it might be important if we let it be. They told me things about their life, small things, about where they'd grown up and what they'd done before coming to this town, about their family and their interests and the things they liked and didn't like. And I told them things too, more than I usually told people, more than I was comfortable with usually, but with them it felt safe. Felt like they'd keep whatever I shared, wouldn't use it against me, or judge me for it, or spread it around. And we started spending time together outside of work, not dating exactly, not calling it that, but getting coffee after shifts ended, going for walks, sitting in the park on weekends, just being around each other, because that felt better than being alone. And there was something between us, something neither of us named, something that felt like it could become love if we let it, if we acknowledged it, if we took the step from whatever we were toward, whatever we might be. But we didn't take that step, kept staying in that comfortable middle space where we could be close without having to deal with all the complications that come with being really together, with calling it a relationship, with having expectations and obligations and all the weight that comes with that. And maybe that was easier, maybe that was safer, maybe we both knew that taking that step risked breaking what we had, turning something good into something that might not work, losing the friendship in the attempt to make it more. So we stayed there in that space for months, maybe close to a year, being together but not together, having something but not everything, satisfied with what we had but also wanting more, both of us aware of what wasn't happening, but neither of us willing to push for it, to force it, to risk it. And then I noticed they were pulling back, becoming less available, taking longer to respond when I suggested getting together, having more excuses about why they couldn't make it. And I felt it, felt them moving away. But I didn't say anything, didn't ask what was happening, didn't push them to explain or tell me what had changed. I found out eventually, heard from someone at work, that they'd started seeing someone else, someone from outside work, someone they'd met somewhere and had started dating, really dating, calling it that, being public about it. And I felt something when I heard that, something I couldn't quite name, not jealousy exactly, but something close to it, something like loss, like I'd missed something, like I'd had a chance and hadn't taken it, and now it was gone. But I didn't say anything to them about it, didn't acknowledge that I knew, just kept being friendly at work, kept talking to them when we crossed paths, kept acting like nothing had changed, even though everything had changed. And they did the same, kept being friendly, kept acting like we were still friends, even though we both knew something had shifted, something had been lost. Something that had been possible wasn't possible anymore. We stopped spending time together outside of work, stopped making plans, stopped seeking each other out during breaks, just drifted apart in that gradual way that doesn't require conversation or explanation. that just happens when people stop making the effort to stay connected. And after a few months of this distance, after enough time had passed that the awkwardness had faded into just normal absence, I left that job, found work somewhere else, moved to a different town. I didn't say goodbye to them specifically, didn't make a point of finding them on my last day to tell them I was leaving. Just left the way I left most places, quietly, without ceremony, without making it a thing. And I don't know if they noticed I was gone, if they asked about me after, if they cared that I'd left without saying anything. But I think about them sometimes, about Sarah or Emily or whoever they were, about what we had and what we didn't have, about the time we spent together in that middle space between friendship and something more. And I think about how we both knew what was happening, both felt that pull toward each other. But neither of us was brave enough or ready enough or willing enough to do anything about it, to name it, to claim it, to turn it into something real. And I wonder sometimes what would have happened if I'd said something, if I'd told them how I felt, if I'd asked them to be more than what we were. Maybe they would have said yes. Maybe they were waiting for me to ask. Maybe they would have chosen me instead of the other person if I'd given them that option. Or maybe they would have said no. Maybe they never felt what I felt. Maybe the connection I thought was mutual was just in my head. I'll never know, and that's fine. That's how these things go. You miss your chance, and the door closes, and you don't get to go back and try again. Don't get to see what would have happened if you'd made a different choice. You just live with the not knowing, live with the possibility that things could have been different, live with the small regret of not taking the risk when you had the chance. But mostly I'm okay with it. Mostly I've accepted that what we had was what we had, nothing more and nothing less. And that trying to make it into something else might have ruined it, might have turned something good into something painful, might have ended badly, instead of just ending quietly the way it did. I left a place once without saying goodbye to someone who mattered, left without acknowledging that I was leaving, without giving them a chance to respond or react or say anything about it. This was after I'd been living somewhere for a while, a year maybe, working a job I didn't care much about, but that paid enough to live on, living in a room I rented from someone who I barely saw, living a life that was simple and quiet and mostly alone. There was someone I'd gotten to know during that time, someone I'd met through work or through mutual acquaintance. The details are fuzzy now, but we'd started spending time together, started having a friendship or something like it, started being part of each other's lives in a small but regular way. Their name was Anna, I think, or maybe it was Mary, one of those old-fashioned names that sounds like it belongs to someone from a different time. They lived nearby, walked the same routes I walked, shopped at the same stores, existed in the same small world I existed in, and we'd run into each other often enough that it became expected. became something I looked for, became something I'd miss when it didn't happen. We'd stop and talk when we ran into each other, stand on the sidewalk or sit on a bench and talk about whatever was happening in our lives, about work and weather and plans and thoughts. The kind of conversations that don't go anywhere specific, but that feel important while they're happening, that feel like they're building something, even if you can't see what that something is. And over time, those chance meetings turned into planned meetings, into deciding to get coffee, or take a walk, or just sit somewhere and talk. And I started to feel like maybe this was becoming something. Maybe this person was becoming important to me, maybe. I was becoming important to them. But I never said that, never told them how I felt, never made it clear that I valued what we had, that I wanted it to continue, that I thought maybe it could become more than what it was. Just kept showing up, kept having conversations, kept being present but not declaring anything, not claiming anything, not making anything official or defined or real. And then I got offered a job somewhere else, a better job with better pay, but it was in a different city, far enough away that I'd have to move, that I couldn't keep living where I was living, that I'd have to leave everything behind and start over somewhere new. I thought about telling them, thought about sitting them down and explaining that I was leaving, that I'd be gone soon, that this thing we had, whatever it was, would be ending because I wouldn't be here anymore. I thought about it a lot, planned conversations in my head, imagined how I'd say it, what words I'd use, how they might respond. But I never did it, never had that conversation, just kept putting it off, kept telling myself I'd do it next time, kept waiting for the right moment that never came. And then suddenly, it was the day before I was leaving, and I still hadn't told them. And I knew I should, knew I needed to, but I couldn't make myself do it, couldn't face the awkwardness of it, couldn't handle the idea of seeing their reaction, of dealing with whatever feelings might come up, of having to explain why I hadn't told them sooner. So I didn't tell them at all, just left, packed my things, and got on a bus and left town without saying anything, without goodbye, without acknowledgement that I was going, that we wouldn't see each other anymore, that whatever we'd been building was over. I thought about them on the bus, thought about how they'd find out. I was gone, probably by running into me, not being there by looking for me, and not finding me by asking someone who might know, and being told I'd moved away. And I thought about how that would feel for them, to discover I'd left without saying anything, without giving them a chance to say goodbye, without showing them the basic respect of acknowledging what we'd shared. And I felt bad about it, felt guilty, felt like I'd done something wrong, like I'd hurt them in a way I shouldn't have hurt them, like I'd been a coward for not facing them, for not having the courage to be honest about leaving. But I also felt relieved, felt like I'd avoided something difficult, something painful, something that would have been hard for both of us. Saying goodbye would have required acknowledging what we had, defining it, putting words to it, and maybe those words wouldn't have matched. Maybe what I thought we had wasn't what they thought we had. Maybe making it explicit would have revealed that it was less than I believed it was. Or maybe it would have revealed it was more. Maybe they would have asked me to stay, or asked to come with me, or said something that would have complicated my leaving, that would have made it harder, that would have forced me to make choices I wasn't ready to make. So I left without knowing, left with it undefined, left with it unfinished, and I carried that with me for a long time, that weight of not saying goodbye, of not being honest, of not giving them what they deserved, which was at minimum acknowledgement that they'd mattered, that our time together had meant something, that I was sorry to be leaving, even if I was going anyway. I thought about writing to them, thought about sending a letter, explaining why I'd left without saying anything, apologizing for it, trying to make it right somehow. But I never did, never wrote that letter. Just let time pass, and let the guilt fade, and let the whole thing become memory. Something that happened that I couldn't change, that I had to accept and live with. And I wonder sometimes what they thought when they realized I was gone, if they were angry or hurt, or just confused, if they understood why I'd done it that way, or if they thought I was cruel or thoughtless, or just did uncare. I wonder if they tried to find me, if they asked around about where I'd gone, if they wanted to reach out, or if they were glad I was gone, glad to be free of whatever obligation or expectation my presence had created. I wonder if they think about me the way I think about them, if that time we spent together stayed with them, or if it faded quickly, became nothing, became just another brief connection in a long life full of brief connections that don't last, that don't mean much beyond the moment they're happening in. And I wonder what would have happened if I'd said goodbye properly, if I'd told them I was leaving, if I'd given us both a chance to acknowledge what we'd shared and to close it with some kind of ceremony, some kind of ritual that would have marked the ending and given it shape and meaning. Maybe it would have been painful. Maybe we would have both cried or felt sad or struggled to find words that matched what we felt. Maybe we would have promised to stay in touch and then not stayed in touch. Let the distance do its work. Let the connection fade naturally, rather than trying to maintain it artificially through letters or calls that would have felt forced and awkward. Or maybe we would have said things that needed to be said, things we'd been holding back, things that would have changed how I remember that time, that would have given me clarity about what it was and what it wasn't, that would have let me know whether I was right to think it was important, or whether I'd been fooling myself, seeing meaning where there wasn't any. But I didn't give us that chance, didn't give them that respect, just left them with absence, with sudden empty space where I used to be, with questions that wouldn't get answered, and confusion that wouldn't get resolved. And that was wrong of me. I know that. I've known it for years, but knowing it doesn't change it, doesn't fix it, doesn't give me a way to go back and do it differently. All I can do is remember it, remember them, remember the time we spent together and the way I ended it or didn't end it, the way I just let it stop without acknowledgement, without goodbye, without the basic dignity of saying yes, this mattered, yes, I'm leaving, yes, I'm sorry it has to be this way. And I carry that with me, that knowledge of what I did and how I did it, and it's become part of how I think about endings, about how things finish or don't finish, about how hard it is to close things properly, to give them the attention they deserve, to honor what was even when you're moving toward what will be. The fire's low now, barely giving off heat anymore, just a few coals glowing in the dark. The cold's one, mostly, pushed in close, made itself at home in all the spaces the fire used to keep warm. My hands are cold, my feet are cold, and I should probably get up, go inside, find somewhere warmer to be, but I'm tired, too tired to move, too settled into this spot to make the effort of leaving it. These stories I've been telling, these memories of connections that didn't quite connect, of relationships that stayed half-formed, of endings that weren't really endings because they were never acknowledged as such. They're heavy tonight, heavier than usual. Maybe because I'm older now. Maybe because I've got more of them accumulated. More instances of not quite, of almost, of maybe if I'd done it differently. But that's how most of life goes, I think. Most connections don't become what they might become. Most possibilities stay possibilities. Most chances don't get taken. And you live with that. Live with the accumulation of what didn't happen, what you didn't do, what you didn't say when you had the chance to say it. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that's just the cost of being alive, of moving through time, of making choices that close off other choices, of leaving places and people behind because staying is impossible, or is unt what you want, or is unt what circumstances allow. The person at the coffee shop who I never asked out, Sarah or Emily who I never told how I felt, Anna or Mary who I left without saying goodbye. They're all gone now, gone from my life. Probably don't think about me at all anymore, if they're even still alive. And I'm here alone by a dying fire in the dark, thinking about them, remembering them, wishing maybe that I'd done things differently, but also knowing that different doesn't necessarily mean better, that the choices I made were the choices I made, and I can't go back and unmake them. The fire's almost dead now, just darkness mostly, and cold. But tomorrow there'll be another fire, probably, if I'm here, if you're here, if any of us are still here doing this. The fire's usually lit around this time. There's room if you want to come back.